Well, welcome back. I'm glad I got the opportunity to come and brief you on NexGen IT. I know it's been a long time coming. We've been working on this. We've discussed it for probably 4 to 5 years, and we actually are on our way to rolling out the NexGen IT capability. So I was asked to give you the top 10 most important things. There's, of course, hours of things that we could tell you about and questions that I know you have that I won't be able to address at this time. But if you contact Jan Collins or send me an email, I will be glad to try to answer your questions. I'm Donna Young. I've been with the program since 2010. It seems like 1994. And have been basically the functional lead, trying to make sure that the actual application will work as we need it to work. So the next slide, please. So these are our top 10 most important things you need to know about NexGen. And I'm going to start at the least important and go to the most important. First of all, NexGen is not just a replacement for ACEs and IWIMs. We have created a full asset management capability tool that will monitor all costs associated with our real property assets. In other words, when any finances are spent on any one of our facilities or buildings or roads, we will be monitoring that. That's a big difference from what we have today. We do have a work order system, we have a project system, we have a real property system and a cost accounting system, but each one is disparate, its own system, and the information does not reside together. It doesn't give our management a holistic viewpoint of what we're actually spending out in our field and how we're spending that money. So NexGen creates one single database that allows all these costs to be doled out to the individual assets and helps us do our financial reporting. The ninth most important reason and thing that's happening with NexGen is it is going to be CFO compliant. What does that really mean? That means every transaction is able to be tied back to who did it, when it was done, and hopefully why it was done, so that there is auditability and everyone can see where our money is spent and how it's spent. Right now, traceability is a hard thing to see throughout our civil engineering installations. And we need to be able to explain to Congress and explain to staff where we're spending our money and why we're spending our money. Next slide. So another thing we're doing is we're standardizing our customer records. Right now, each installation has its own customer codes. And each code represents a different organization and helps to establish the reimbursable process and who owns the buildings. We are getting rid of those codes and replacing them with customer records. In other words, the Security Forces Directorate will be security forces in our system. It will no longer be a number that nobody has, except for a few people, have information as to who it is. It makes it more readable, more transparent, and we're trying to make it so that if you want to find out what security forces facilities we are maintaining and how much it's costing us, we can search just on security forces throughout the whole Air Force and figure out what we're spending for one particular user. That is a big change, and with it comes a lot of data cleanup and a lot of standardization. And we're going to be depending on the CE financial managers to help us make those codes reconciled with new customer records. The seventh most important thing, TRIRIGA is also being configured for real property information model. Why do financial managers care if we're RIPM compliant? Well, a lot of the fields for RIPM compliance happen to be things like the department regular code, the main account code, the sub-account code. And in our legacy systems, they're disparate. You can pick the wrong department regular code with the main account code or sub-account code. We've tried to rectify that with NexGen, and made sure that the right combinations are there so that we can only pick valid combinations. That's part of setting up for the whole RIPA model. So we standardize our real property data for all of our installations. It makes it so that when we report up to Congress, we can give them one picture that is consistent, and we're doing it all the same way. Number 6, we've standardized the shop rate. Right now, I believe that every shop and every labor category even could have its own shop rate. We've come up with a situation to make it easier and less labor intensive to have one shop rate for all of the installation operations areas, and to calculate that only yearly, not on a monthly basis or a periodic basis. We tried to take this opportunity to be more streamlined and have everyone do things the same way. Again, that's one of the major benefits of NexGen, is making sure that all of our installations are processing its data in the same way, in the same format, so we can make great decisions based on that data. Next slide. The 5th major point, TRIREGA enables GPC program management. I'm not aware of today that we have any way in our current IWIM system to really monitor the GPC cards as we do it. We do have some purchase order capability and purchase requisition capability. But in our case, we now have it so that all of that is trackable. It's trackable to the shop that purchases it or requires it. It is trackable as well to the work order it supports. We're even, which goes into 4, ensuring that there is PEC integrity. In other words, we're not using sustainment dollars to do restoration and modernization dollars. We're really trying to make sure that as much as possible, we can put the right kind of money against the right type of purchase. That's been difficult in the past, and we're hoping to make improvements with that, with TRIREGA in the future. One of the things we have been able to do, and successfully, is make sure that our requisitions with prime vendor, that interface is still valid and still going to be able to continue through the future. We've tested it now at 2 to 3 events, and we've made good progress. We've been working with our trading partners, and it seems as though we are getting very close to having the prime vendor interfaces working. So here's the bad news. Because TRIREGA does so much more, because it's a full cost management system and an asset management system, unfortunately, a lot of the data we need is not with any current IT system. We have a large setup requirement that will have to happen at each installation prior to going live. We've tried at some ways to create databases for you. You might have heard of a funding document database that we're putting out there, that we can collect information prior to going live so we cannot have to manually load it. We wanted to do that as much as possible because in TRIREGA, every bit of work is tied to a funding document. Work orders will have a funding document, projects, energy usage, everything will have to be tied to what we in TRIREGA call a funding document. What that does is establish the budget for it and the amount of money that we are going to allocate towards that expense. And then it puts the right element codes and sub-account codes and main account codes to that so we can talk to other financial systems. So to make the whole cost roll into the asset, we have to capture things like service contracts. Well, right now, all of our service contracts, our big 3 and every other service contract we do, is really basically controlled through Excel spreadsheets and done at the desktop instead of done in a consolidated database. We will have to enter all that information into NexGen so that the system knows what items are reimbursable by customers and which ones are not. So there will be a lot of setup. Other setup areas are utilities. We do have the AFER system, and it does tie cost and accounting to utilities in a system. However, it doesn't tie it to facilities or to assets or any other factor. So right now, if a building is a high energy hog, we have no way of knowing that because we have no system that says how much money is being spent on that installation or that building for that utility. We actually are going to have to set up every meter and every bill to a meter and every one of those meters to buildings. That helps us with our reimbursable process, but it also gives us the full cost of utility expenses. Just think about the decisions that can be made if we can actually sit and determine which facilities may need major improvements to make them less energy intensive. We could really start to focus where people should be based on how economical the building is. And that's one of the things that NexGen is going to help us do as opposed to our disparate systems that we have today. So TRIREGA is a big setup hog. So we have the service contracts, the utilities, and the funding documents. And we'll be sending out information to CE on what got information together. And we're setting up Excel spreadsheets so that we can have it in the right format, just so that we can get the data in within the first weeks of operating at a base when we go live. Next slide. So this is the big news for the financial managers in CE. We've spent a lot of time, effort, sweat, and some tears on automating the reimbursable process. It has been extensive to be able to get the service contracts, the projects, the work orders, and the utilities all into this application and have a way to be able to dole the costs out to each individual customer. We've come up with a tool called a reimbursable agreement within TRIREGA. And every reimbursable customer will need to have a reimbursable agreement set up within it. Yes, it's a lot of work. But look at what happens over the year. Every month, you will not have to do the hand calculations and the hand manipulation it takes to create those reimbursable costs that we give out to our customers. It'll make it more auditable so that our customers know exactly what they did and there's no doubt that we have spent their money wisely, which we always do, but we cannot always show and demonstrate. And when we get our interfaces with Deems, which we are working through, it will automate those processes to make sure that none of that is done manually. But right now, we've got reimbursable reports being created within our system so that we can hand them over to our FMers and that they have to enter the data. But for us in CE, it becomes reimbursable. So the last and most important comment I can give you of the top 10 is that we are on schedule for a summer 2015 IOC at Andrews. We have been working diligently to keep the newest schedule, and I know we've had some pitfalls and shortfalls in the past, but we've been working diligently to keep on track for summer of 2015. So what does that mean? That means that all the Guard, all the reserves, and all the active duty members within Civil Engineer will be able to get online with NexGen in the summer of 2015. That's a big difference. And we'll be able to have every one of the facility managers that are associated on the installation be able to put in their call orders, put in their tasks within our IT system. This is a big improvement. We've had lots of setbacks over the last couple years, but we've been really, really diligently working to make sure that we meet this summer of 2015. Why is it important that we stay on schedule? Well, IWIMS is very, very antiquated. We know that it is antiquated. We have been keeping it on its last capabilities for 2 years now. And we know that eventually it's not going to work anymore. So we need to give our ops brethren a tool that they can use to be able to manage their work and operate without risk of losing their IT system. And so we are pushing forward, and we are strenuously working to meet our IOC date in Andrews. So just to give you some background on where we've been, we have held 6 testing events so far, and each testing event has gotten us closer and closer to the final product that will be delivered in the summer of 2015. At those events, we have made sure that we've had base level representation, MAGCOM level, AFCEC level, HAF level representation. No one has been sitting in a corner by themselves doing this without needed input from all levels. There are frustrations at times with a product because it will not be perfect when it rolls out. We are aiming for an 80% solution, and we will be looking to make that whole over the next following years. I'm looking forward to finally getting this out to you because it is a great tool. It's versatile. It's got reporting capabilities that allows data to be pulled out well. It gives our upper management the capability to make good engineering decisions. We can rack and stack projects across the Air Force without doing data calls outside of TRIRIGA and out of the NexGen IT solution. These are all things that will, after the initial setup, make CE a more effective and better application than anything we have today. I wish I could take some questions because I really like to talk about NexGen. I've been doing it for 4 years and do appreciate how important it is. And I just want to say that, like I said, I'll be online, and you can find me in the Global, and I'll be glad to answer questions. And I especially want to thank Jan Collins, who has been heading up the financial management section for CE. She's dedicated a lot of time and resources in the last year to this program. And without her, it would not have been a success. Thanks again.